Ladies and gentlemen, please put our hands together to welcome our distinguished guests into the hall. A big round of applause. The Honorable John Casey Lee, the Honorable Paul Lam, the Honorable Chief Justice Andrew Cheung, distinguished judges, eminent experts and speakers, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the Rule of Law Congress, Rule of Law and Justice for All, organized by the Department of Justice of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region of the People's Republic of China. A very warm welcome to everyone participating in today's Congress, both physically and also online. My name is Vinci, the MC for today. Before the Congress begins, we would like to invite the following distinguished guests to proceed onto the stage for a group photo. Let's first welcome the Honorable John Casey Lee, the Chief Executive of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. A big round of applause. Next, let's welcome Mr. Chen Dong, Deputy Director of the Liaison Office of the Central People's Government in the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. The Honorable Andrew Cheung Nong JPM, the Chief Justice of the Court of Final Appeal. Welcome, Chief Justice. Secretary for Justice, the Honorable Paul T.K. Lam, SBS SCJP. Welcome, SJ. The Honorable Robert Tang Ching, GBM SBS JP, non-permanent judge of the Court of Final Appeal. Welcome. Next, let's welcome the Honorable Elsie Leung OIC, GBM JP, former Vice Chairperson of Basic Law Committee of NPCSC. Welcome. Last but not the least, let's welcome Professor Ignacio TIRADO, Secretary General of the International Institute for the Unification of Private Law, UNIDROIT, onto the stage. So I think we have official photographers here, but also a lot of media right at the back of this hall. So let's have the first group photo by a photographer first, and then we will look at the media right at the back of this hall. So our distinguished guests, please look at the official photographer right in front of you for the first group photo to capture this important moment. And now please look at the media right at the back of this hall. 請望望啦，喺我哋會場後方嘅傳媒朋友，記錄我哋香港法律周2022重要嘅一刻。Okay, so now let's have one more by our official photographer. Thank you everyone. Let's put our hands once again to thank you our distinguished guests. Thank you. May Chief Executive please kindly remain on stage for his opening remarks, and other distinguished guests please kindly proceed and please be seated. Now we would like to welcome Chief Executive to proceed to the podium to officiate the opening ceremony of today's Congress. 接住落嚟，我哋今日好榮幸邀請到中華人民共和國香港特別行政區行政長官李家超先生大致經分言 SBS、PDSM、PMSM 為我哋致開幕詞。喺呢個時候，我哋用熱烈嘅掌聲歡迎行政長官為我哋致辭。
陳東副主任、張舉能首席法官 Professor Ignacio TIRADO， 各位嘉賓、各位朋友，我好高興 出席由香港特別行政區我哋嘅政府律政司舉辦嘅香港法律周2022壓軸活動法治大會。轉眼間一連5日嘅法律周嚟到最後一日，我喺星期一喺法律周開幕嘅時候，我喺會上邊用咗英文同各位嘉賓介紹咗香港嘅法律制度同埋多元嘅法律專業服務。香港係一個中外文化並存嘅社會，兩文三語好普及。今日嚟到法律周最後一日，我希望用中文發言，同大家介紹下香港嘅優越法治，以及我哋建立亞太區國際法律同埋爭議解決服務中心嘅方向。香港係一個擁有深厚法治傳統嘅城市，法治早已經融入香港社會嘅各方面，為各行各業蓬勃發展奠定咗堅實嘅基礎。根據世界銀行公佈嘅世界管治指數，香港嘅法治嘅指數回歸祖國之前呢，喺1996年呢係69.85分，係唔夠70分嘅。之後呢一直係穩步上升，到咗2003年開始，連續19年呢都超過90分，體現咗香港嘅法治發展水平係得到國際社會嘅認可。香港法治嘅普通法制度獲得基本法嘅支持同埋保障，一國兩制俾咗香港最佳嘅制度保障。一國兩制係前無古人嘅偉大創舉，係香港特別行政區成立嘅基礎。一國係根，係兩制嘅前提。我哋必須維護我哋嘅憲法、基本法共同構建嘅特區憲制基礎同埋秩序。為此，本屆特區政府一項重要嘅工作就係加強有關憲法、基本法以及香港國安法嘅公眾宣傳同埋教育。我喺上月發表嘅施政報告，公佈咗由政務司司長領導嘅基本法推廣督導委員會，會改名為憲法和基本法推廣督導委員會，反映政府對推廣憲法工作嘅重視同埋決心。政府亦都會成立由律政司司長領導嘅法治教育督導委員會，去推進法治教育領袖培訓計劃，為不同背景嘅市民提供適切嘅法治教材，並且透過法治教育向領袖同埋社區推廣一致以及正確嘅法治信息，令到大眾係清晰理解香港特區嘅憲制秩序。同時，政府全力支持司法機構依法獨立行使審判權，保障同埋支持法官、檢控人員以及法律從業人員依法履行職務，維護司法公正同埋法治精神，增強市民同埋國際社會對香港法治嘅信心。習近平主席喺7月1號發表嘅重要講話裏邊強調，一國兩制係一項經過實踐、反覆檢驗嘅好制度，冇理由改變，必須長期堅持。中國共產黨第20次全國代表大會上面喺上月勝利閉幕。20大報告裏邊強調，一國兩制係香港回歸之後保持長期繁榮穩定嘅最佳制度安排，必須長期堅持。中央政府已經清楚表明對於一國兩制嘅態度，從根本上消除咗坊間以至國際社會對於一國兩制是否長期存續嘅一啲議論，對香港嘅長期繁榮穩定提供咗信心嘅保證。喺一國兩制之下，香港擁有背靠祖國、 聯通世界嘅得天獨厚優勢。香港可以成為國內大循環嘅參與者，以及國際循環嘅促進者，發揮自身所長，貢獻國家經濟發展。國家十四五規劃對香港提出8大中心嘅戰略定位，將會鞏固同埋提升香港嘅競爭優勢。要實現呢一個目標，必須要有堅實嘅法治、法律同埋司法制度作基礎。要鞏固香港嘅國際金融中心地位，完善嘅金融法律同埋監管規則係非常重要。而要構建國際創新科技中心同埋中外文化藝術交流中心，我哋需要同國際接軌嘅知識產權法規。因此，保持香港作為亞太區國際法律及爭議解決服務中心嘅地位，對於香港整體喺呢方面發展具有重大嘅意義。喺一國兩制之下，香港係中國唯一一個實行普通法制嘅司法管轄區。香港嘅普通法制度同世界不同經濟體以及國際商事規則相接軌。香港嘅國際法律人才經驗豐富，精通2文3語，專業服務享負盛名。不同嘅國際爭議解決機構亦都選擇喺香港設立區域中心。為咗把握內地發展機遇並且加強區域合作，政府會成立由行政長官擔任組長嘅融入國家發展大局嘅督導組。督導組將會由3位司長作副組長，獨當一面咁推動跨局嘅督導工作。其中，律政司司長將領導一個負責小組，專力係負責推動粵港澳大灣區同其他城市喺香港嘅民商事司法協助，促進兩地法律嘅實務接軌，並且喺大灣區設立爭議解決服務嘅線上調解平台，便利跨境民商事活動，充分發揮大灣區一國兩制3法域嘅獨特優勢。各位嘉賓，上星期特區政府公布咗一項凸顯香港嘅法律同埋爭議解決服務備受國際認可、令人鼓舞嘅消息，就係國際調解院嘅籌備辦公室將會喺香港特區成立。國際調解院係中國同埋多個國家共同發起建立嘅，將會為國際爭議提供友好、靈活、經濟、便捷嘅調解服務。喺香港設立國際調解院籌備辦公室，不但體現咗國家大力支持香港喺一國兩制之下嘅獨特優勢，亦都標誌住多個國家共同對香港特區投下信心一票。香港具備充分條件，可以成為以促成交易、解決爭議為本嘅亞太區國際法律及爭議解決服務中心。各位嘉賓、各位朋友，當今國際經濟同埋政治格局複雜多變，世界各國對於關乎國家安全嘅威脅都會格外留神，我哋國家亦都不例外。作為中華人民共和國不可分離嘅部分，香港特別行政區自然要肩負起維護國家安全嘅責任同埋義務。呢個更加係一份重要嘅使命，因為維護國家主權、安全同埋發展利益，正正係一國兩制方針嘅最高原則。沒有一國就沒有兩制。喺2年多前，中央頒布實施香港國安法。香港國安法第4條訂明，香港特區維護國家安全，應當尊重、 和保障人權，依法保護香港居民根據《基本法》和《公民權利和政治權利國際公約》、《經濟社會與文化權利的國際公約》適用於香港有關規定享有嘅，包括言論、新聞、出版嘅自由、結社、集會、遊行、示威嘅自由在內嘅權利同埋自由。法治原則嘅基本原意包括罪刑法定、無罪推定、訴訟權利、事不再審等重要原則，都受到香港國安法第5條保障。事實勝於雄辯，香港國安法對維護香港秩序同埋安全起咗重要嘅作用，不但撥亂反正，法治亦都得到鞏固。自香港國安法實施以嚟，香港各方面都變得更安全、更穩定。未來我哋必須持續增強憂患意識，建立底線思維，確保維護國家主權、安全、發展利益嘅工作持久進行。除咗加強執法、情報收集、宣傳教育、籌備立法等工作之外，我哋亦都會加強對外界說好香港嘅真實法治故事。因為喺外國，好多人士未必全面準確了解香港嘅實況，單憑一啲媒體報導以及社交媒體流傳一啲不實、不正確嘅信息，容易令佢哋對香港產生誤解。今個星期舉行嘅香港法律周2022，從多角度向世界展示咗香港喺法律服務嘅發展呢方面嘅成果以及國際視野等等，就係說好香港喺法治故事嘅一個好開始。特區政府喺2020年舉辦首屆法治大會時，由於新冠疫情，活動嘅規模受限，嘉賓亦都主要係以網上嘅形式參與。到今日再次舉辦法治大會，香港喺精準防疫之下，正係有序穩妥咁減少限制嘅措施。現場不單止高朋滿座，更加有多位海外知名嘅講者遠道而嚟，親臨香港，親身去見證香港重返世界舞台。香港擁有好多值得同世界分享美好嘅事。我哋有自由而充滿活力嘅經濟，有多元而富有創意嘅文化，有深厚而與時俱進嘅法治等等。呢一次香港法律周2022係一個起點，特區政府將繼續透過官員同埋不同界別嘅領袖到外地訪問、宣傳、聯繫，以及喺香港舉辦國際盛事同埋會議等嘅不同形式，向國際社會說好香港嘅真實故事，展示香港得天獨厚嘅優勢。最後，我祝賀今日嘅法治大會圓滿成功，在座各位身體健康，多謝大家。
多謝行政長官為我哋香港法律周2022壓軸活動法治大會揭開序幕㗎，請行政長官會座。Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome the next distinguished guest onto the stage to deliver the opening remarks for us. We would now like to invite the Chief Justice of the Court of Final Appeal, the Honorable Andrew张舉能 GBM, onto the stage to deliver his opening remarks. Chief Justice Zhang, please.
Chief Executive, Director Chen, Secretary for Justice, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to be invited to make these opening remarks at this year's Rule of Law Congress. Since the inaugural Hong Kong Legal Week in 2019, this event has quickly become one of great significance, not just to the legal industry, but to a wider audience in general. It is an important reminder of the Hong Kong SAR's dedication to the rule of law, and also the need of the public to understand and value the rule of law in order for a culture of lawfulness and a peaceful society to flourish. In this regard, I extend my heartfelt thanks to the Department of Justice for their annual arrangement. It has long been said that Hong Kong's success was built on the strength of its rule of law. This is undoubtedly true. The rule of law and lawfulness indeed underlie Hong Kong's prosperity and peaceful society. As is generally agreed, the rule of law requires that laws must be properly enacted and clearly expressed. They must be published and publicly accessible. The rule of law also means that laws must be seriously enforced, and where there are disputes about the law, there must be means to resolve those disputes. The rule of law as practiced in Hong Kong also embraces the protection of human rights. In Hong Kong, fundamental human rights are constitutionally guaranteed and protected under Chapter 3 of the Basic Law and the Hong Kong Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is based on the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which is constitutionally entrenched under Article 39 of the Basic Law. Moreover, although many of these rights are not absolute, the courts have consistently given them generous interpretations and jealously guarded against any restrictions. An important premise of the rule of law is an independent judiciary that upholds the rule of law and safeguards the rights and freedoms of all members of society. This is what is provided for under the Basic Law. Articles 2 and 19 of the Basic Law specifically provide that the Hong Kong SAR enjoys and is vested with independent judicial power, including that of final adjudication. Article 85 goes on to provide that courts shall exercise the judicial power independently, free from any interference. Our impartial, independent and transparent judicial system therefore provides individuals and organizations with a secure business environment and a level playing field. They can be confident that whatever disputes that may come their way will be resolved in a fair manner by a court system that administers justice without fear or favor, bias or deceit. Our court hearings are open to the public. Our judicial decisions are publicly announced, and the court's reasons are published for everyone to study. All this is designed to enhance the public's awareness of and confidence in the rule of law in Hong Kong. However, the rule of law is not static. It also continues to grow and evolve, and encapsulate and incorporate new elements of fairness and equality, and new forms of dispute resolution. Indeed, a natural extension of the rule of law is the growth and development of different forms of dispute resolution. This is an important topic, particularly for the judiciary. In recent years, court-annexed mediation and other means of dispute resolution have grown and flourished in Hong Kong. As new ways of doing business and interacting with one another evolve at an ever-increasing pace, the demand for timely, cost-effective dispute resolution mechanisms also grows. As one of Lord Bingham's principles of the rule of law has it, means must be provided for resolving, without prohibitive cost or inordinate delay, bona fide civil disputes which the parties themselves are unable to resolve. Whilst the courts are there to provide dispute resolution through litigation, it must be recognized that litigation is not always accessible to all, and the outcomes of litigation are not always ideal or time and cost effective. By ensuring increased access to different forms of dispute resolution mechanisms, access to justice is enhanced and the reach of the rule of law is both greater and firmer. And this, in turn, promotes the benefits that are associated with the rule of law. The importance of the rule of law continuing to develop is critical in ensuring that the developing needs of society are met, particularly as relates to access to justice by society at large. Failing to meet this demand could lead to disillusionment with the rule of law, and it is of critical importance to the future that the support of the next generation for the rule of law is enlisted. In addition to ensuring members of society have good access to justice, it is equally important that they are armed with an understanding and appreciation for the rule of law. This issue of education is of such importance that the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization and the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime have in recent years partnered together and jointly developed educational tools and materials and to train teachers on rights and the rule of law, called the Global Citizenship Education for the Rule of Law. Schools are, in many ways, a microcosm of society, and as such, they are the perfect environment in which young people ought to be engaged in thinking about the rule of law, its purpose and benefits, and why the rule of law is superior to, say, the rule of man, mob rule, or rule by law. The youth of Hong Kong, and indeed the world over, are just as significant contributors to a culture of the rule of law and lawfulness as other members of society. Although the rule of law is open to different legitimate interpretations, like many other concepts, it is susceptible to be misinterpreted and misused. In this information technology-driven era, bias and misinformation are just as easily spread, if not more easily spread, than information. In prosperity, it is all too easy to take the rule of law for granted, as it seems to naturally underpin our society. Yet, without fair-mindedness and without a culture of lawfulness, there can be no rule of law. These are values that we must now work hard to impart on the next generations, to ensure that they too will safeguard the rule of law and enjoy the benefits of a fair and peaceful society in which justice is accessible to all. Looking at today's program, if I were to pick one word to describe it, it would be progress. The rule of law is not static. It must also develop and evolve to meet the needs of society. New elements will be incorporated, and the old elements must also be continuously reviewed and strengthened. The topics being discussed today not only examine what the rule of law is, but what it can be for us all in the future. As I mentioned, this conference is a reminder of Hong Kong's dedication. We are dedicated to safeguarding and maintaining our rule of law. With maintenance comes development, and with development comes evolution. And so it must be with the rule of law, that in its safeguarding, we must also ensure that it continues to grow so that it is strong enough to meet the future challenges of society. With that in mind, I'm sure you are all looking forward to today's program, and it only remains for me to thank again the Department of Justice for their arrangement and extend our appreciation to each of the speakers for their contributions, and of course, to all of you for your time in joining this Congress today. I trust it will be a successful conference, and I look forward to seeing the fruits it will bear in due course. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief Justice Zhang. Please be seated. The rule of law is one of Hong Kong's greatest strengths. It is the cornerstone of Hong Kong's Special Administrative Region's success, both as an international financial center and an international legal, deal-making, and dispute resolution hub. Today's Congress provides a valuable opportunity to gather together local, mainland, regional, and even international speakers for insightful exchanges on the rule of law. 喺呢個時候，我哋有請中華人民共和國香港特別行政區政府律政司司長林定國先生 SBS SCJP 嚟到台上面為我哋致開幕詞，有請司長。
行政長官、終審法院首席法官陳東副主任、TIRADO 秘書長、各位嘉賓、先生、女士，大家早晨。我會效法特首咧，用廣東話咧，今朝同大家講幾句。唔經唔覺，2020香港法律週已經嚟到最後嘅一日。首先，我係希望藉呢個機會，好多謝同我哋律政司一齊合辦呢一個星期活動所有嘅機構，更加要感謝每一位參與者，尤其是係嚟自海外嘅嘉賓。今日我哋上映嘅咧係我哋嘅壓軸好戲《法治大會》，我哋中文咧就譯做法治公義，普惠共存。我希望透過今日嘅大會，同大家，尤其是係香港嘅市民大眾，傳遞一個非常簡單，但我認為非常之重要嘅信息。呢一個信息就係，雖然法治睇嚟係一個好抽象、好難以捉摸嘅概念，但係其實同我哋每一個人都係息息相關。所以我哋一齊去維護同埋鞏固香港嘅法治，唔單止係我哋每一位市民大眾應有之義，亦都符合我哋各自以至香港，甚至整個國家嘅最大利益。我哋首先可以從世界觀出發。喺2015年嘅9月，聯合國通過咗2030持續發展議程，提出咗17個項目嘅目標，而其中第16個目標就係推動一個公平、和平同埋包容嘅社會，特別係提及到要推動法治，強調咗法治同埋社會發展嘅密切關係。就國家嘅層面而言，喺啱啱舉行嘅中國共產黨第20次全國代表大會嘅報告裏邊，其中一個主題就係要加快建構新發展格局，着力推動高質量嘅發展。我諗高質量嘅發展其中一個要素必然係佢嘅可持續性，而另一個主題係堅持全面依法治國，推進法治嘅中國建設。高質量可持續發展同埋法治建設之間嘅關係，無疑係我哋國家建設全面社會主義現代化國家，同埋實現我哋中華民族偉大復興歷史進程一個非常重要嘅議題。講到香港，我哋一定要謹記，例如特首啱提醒我哋， 一國兩制嘅最高原則係維護國家嘅主權、安全同埋發展利益。而一國兩制其中一個目的，當然亦都係維持我哋香港嘅長期繁榮穩定，促進國家整體嘅發展利益，維持香港嘅長期繁榮穩定。受惠嘅將會係包括喺我哋香港生活國家之內所有嘅人。要達到呢咁重要嘅目的，當然要充分利用我哋香港獨特嘅優勢。咁當然包括建基於我哋普通法制度之下優良嘅法治環境。喺行政長官啱啱發表嘅施政報告，亦都提出係要鞏固我哋嘅法治呢個根本嘅核心價值。所以我係非常期待第一陣間國際統一司法協會TIRADO 秘書長將會發表題為《法治促進可持續發展》呢一個主題嘅演講。嗱，講到法治，習近平主席喺今年嘅7·1講話裏邊表達希望咧香港能夠不斷發展，增強發展動能。中央將會全面支持香港抓住國家發展帶嚟嘅歷史機遇，主動對接各項高質量發展嘅國家戰略。施政報告亦都指出，14·5規劃、大灣區建設同埋一帶一路倡議呢啲國家嘅戰略，為香港注入咗源源不絕嘅發展動能。14·5規劃亦都確立咗我哋香港8大中心嘅定位，包括國際中文中心啦、國際創新科技中心、中外文化藝術交流中心、國際貿易中心、國際航運中心、國際航運樞紐、亞太區國際法律同埋爭議解決服務中心同埋區域知識產權嘅貿易中心。建設亞太區國際法律同埋爭議解決服務中心係8大中心定位之一，但係要鞏固同埋建設其他發展嘅重心，必須先要明白佢哋互相之間係有住密不可分嘅關係，甚至可以話係環環相扣。我特別希望強調其中一個至為重要嘅共通關鍵點，就係所有各方面嘅發展都必須要建基於一個穩固、可以信賴同埋與時並進嘅法律制度。舉幾個好簡單嘅例子：一，要建設國際創新科技中心，當然需要完善我哋喺知識版權方面嘅法律，包括版權啦、專利權等等。第二，要建設國際嘅航運中心，培養熟悉海事法律嘅專才，必不可少。第三，即使睇起嚟同法律冇乜太大直接關係嘅中外文化藝術交流中心，亦難免需要顧及到藝術品交易嘅法律能唔能夠配合到時代嘅需要，例如涉及嶄新嘅非同質文化代幣形式藝術品，即係我哋所謂 NFT 嘅交易。喺今早，我哋非常之榮幸能夠邀請到喺金融同埋資產管理、海事、創新科技同埋藝術文化嘅翹楚，分享佢哋對各自專長領域同埋法律法治之間嘅關係嘅一啲意見。正如我啱啱提到，為咗發揮香港普通法制度嘅優勢，我哋將會鞏固同埋建設香港成為亞太區國際法律同埋爭議解決服務中心。就爭議解決服務而言，我認為係有2個大嘅重點。首先係爭議解決服務嘅多元化。爭議解決3大嘅主要途徑係訴訟、仲裁同埋調解。雖然近年嚟用其他嘅方式解決爭議嘅發展好迅速，但係傳統嘅訴訟仍然扮演住係主要同埋一個十分重要嘅角色。我哋香港非常之好彩，擁有一個蜚聲國際、擁有獨立審判權嘅司法機關法庭。但係我哋唔應該，亦都唔可以自滿。點樣增進訴訟嘅效率，例如善用法律嘅科技，係未來嘅挑戰。香港而家已經係全世界最受歡迎嘅仲裁地之一。 為咗吸引更加多人選擇香港作為仲裁地，喺近年嚟，我哋不斷推行有關仲裁法律嘅一啲改革，包括啱啱通過咗冇幾耐，容許法律費用同埋仲裁結果掛鈎嘅法律。律政司將會繼續完善同埋積極推廣香港能夠提供嘅仲裁服務同埋相關嘅配套。至於調解，無論係司法機關或者法律界人士，都好大力推廣佢作為替代訴訟嘅解決爭議方法。例如司法機關、司法機構綜合調解辦事處已經喺今年嘅7月5日正式啟用。而值得一提，亦都係特首頭先提過嘅，就係香港喺調解嘅發展方面得到咗國家嘅堅實支持。國家最近同多國共同起草同埋簽署咗關於建立國際調解院嘅聯合聲明，當中指定國際調解院嘅籌備辦公室設立喺香港特區。籌備辦公室預計會喺2023年起開展，同埋組織相關嘅國際公約談判，同埋建立國際調解院嘅籌備工作。我哋期望喺建立國際調解院公約嘅談判結束同埋成功簽訂之後，香港嘅籌備辦公室將會轉型成為國際調解院嘅秘書處同埋總部。國際性嘅組織嘅秘書處同埋總部設立喺香港，係國家史無前例嘅創舉，顯示咗中央對香港建設成為國際法律服務同埋爭議解決中心嘅信心同埋支持。可以話係中央送俾香港一份大禮。我哋一定要不負所託，盡最大嘅努力完成呢個使命。第二，我認為爭議解決服務嘅第二個重點係普及化。爭議解決服務嘅最終目的係提供途徑，等人民喺面對爭端嘅時候，能夠依據法律尋求同埋得到公平同埋正義。眾所周知，法治其中一個好重要嘅環節，正正就係尋求司法公義。我哋英文成日講嘅 access to justice， 而當中嘅關鍵係提供便利、有效率、合理成本嘅解決爭議途徑。我哋需要照顧嘅唔單止一啲跨境嘅國際企業、商業或者金融機構，而係不論背景嘅每一位市民。呢個亦都解釋咗點解我喺之前唔同嘅場合都強調，我嘅心願係將香港打造成為法律服務嘅美食廣場，提供唔同款式、唔同成本嘅爭議解決服務。只要係有需要嘅人，都揾到佢哋所需，各適其適。但係建立咁樣嘅美食廣場咧，都係唔足夠。更加重要嘅係令到市民大眾理解呢一個美食廣場究竟提供啲乜嘢美食，吸引佢哋嚟光顧。所以律政司未來一項重要嘅工作就係推廣我哋嘅法治，包括我哋嘅法律服務、爭議解決服務，令到大家對香港提供嘅法律服務多啲理解，建立佢哋使用我哋法律制度同埋服務嘅信心。喺今日嘅下午，我哋邀請到幾位喺法律爭議解決方面非常之有經驗同能力嘅專家，分享佢哋嘅真知灼見，當中包括終審法院嘅非常任法官。青年興則香港興。習主席喺7·1重要講話裏邊特別要求我哋要更加關心關愛青年人。青年人係法治建設嘅重要參與者，亦都因為咁，今日下午咧，我哋會有一個新搞作，特別嘅環節，等我哋年輕嘅一代咧集思廣益，共商點樣可以更加好促使法治可以喺社區紮根。參與嘅人士唔單止包括我哋香港本地嘅年青人，亦都有嚟自東南亞國家馬來西亞同新加坡嘅年青朋友。我相信大家都會好有興趣、好好奇，聽一聽嚟自唔同地區嘅年青人 對於法治呢個重大嘅議題有啲乜嘢新穎嘅諗法？我相信冇人會反對，法治係香港最寶貴嘅資產之一。我哋一定要好好保護佢，令到佢更加茁壯。但係我哋都唔能夠低估同埋忽視，因為時代嘅轉變或者地緣政治等等複雜嘅因素所帶嚟巨大嘅挑戰。我哋必須要以不卑不亢嘅態度，勇敢同埋認真去面對呢一啲挑戰。我好希望令大家明白，鞏固同埋維護香港法治呢一個咁重大嘅使命，唔應該，亦都唔可能單係由法庭、律師或者法律工作者單獨完成。法律同埋法治同我哋每一個人都息息相關，係我哋福祉所係。我哋每一位，我強調每一位，冇例外，都應該係，亦都需要係法治嘅建設者同埋維護者。所以，我好誠意咁邀請大家一齊努力，為香港嘅法治建設出一分力，發一分光，令到香港我哋呢個屋企變得更加美好，亦都為國家嘅發展作出貢獻。最後，我喺呢度預祝今日嘅法治大會圓滿成功。多謝大家。
多謝司長嘅支持。請回座。唔經唔覺啦，一連5日。香港法律周2022啦，已經嚟到我哋今日嘅壓軸活動法治大會。今日啦，要向全香港嘅市民啦傳達一個好重要嘅信息，就係香港嘅法治精神啊，係同每一個市民息息相關。我哋咧需要維護同埋鞏固香港嘅法治噶。喺呢個時候咧，想借大家最熱烈嘅掌聲，再一次多謝行政長官張舉能首席法官以及司長啦，為我哋今日法治大會揭開序幕。A big round of applause to Chief Executive Chief Justice Zhang and also SJ for giving our opening remarks to officiate today's event. 好，喺呢個時候啦，我哋行政長官李家超先生需要出席其他官方活動，需要先行離開。喺度我哋借大家最熱烈嘅掌聲，再一次多謝行政長官出席我哋今日法治大會嘅開幕儀式。Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause to Chief Executive, the Honourable John Casey Lee, for joining us today. Thank you so much. 今日啦，我哋將會啦有3個唔同嘅專題研討㗎。而剛才啦，司長都提及啦，我哋今日下午啦有一個好特別嘅專題研討啦，就係社區對法治的承諾，年輕一代嘅角色。期待啦，喺每一個專題研討入面啊，都有獨特嘅分享㗎。Now, it is my honor to invite Professor Ignacio TIRADO, Secretary General of the International Institute for the Unification of Private Law, UNIDROIT, onto the stage to deliver the keynote speech for us. Professor TIRADO, please.
Good morning, everyone. Honourable Secretary of Justice, Honourable Chief Justice, distinguished representatives of the international community, ladies and gentlemen, all friends. I have good news for you, for those of you who've been here through the week. And this is the last time you're going to be hearing me speak. I'm sure it's going to be a relief for all of you. I have personally enjoyed very much the entire week, which has been a resounding success. As I am extremely happy to have been back here in Hong Kong, a city which I have found victorious of the epidemic and as vibrant and energetic as it has always been. So it has been a pleasure. When I was asked to speak at the Rule of Law Conference and its link with sustainable development, at first I thought it was a challenge. But immediately right after, I thought this situation of UNIDROIT as one of the main transnational law organizations. And its direct relationship of private law with sustainable development placed us in an excellent position to undertake this commitment. And I will try to do so in a technical but hopefully minimally entertaining keynote, which I will keep as brief as possible, by providing some examples as to how transnational private law, not public, and this is important because it's less obvious, can help achieve sustainable development. The first thing that I'm trying to move on slide. There you go. The first thing that I think constituted a challenge for this speech was to the very use of both rule of law and sustainable development, because the rule of law is an elusive concept. It's difficult to know what a rule of law is, actually, and it's something which I think merits looking back in time and looking back into history. Although there are many versions as to when the expression rule of law happened, perhaps we can go back all the way to the philosopher Rutherford in the 17th century of the United Kingdom, England, where he presented his famous treatise on the law and the prince, his idea being, of course, lex is rex, as opposed to rex is lex, so the law is king as opposed to the king is the law. The idea of the supremacy of the law over those that are in power, the king or whoever it is. So the primacy of the law over authority, all equal under one law. This was the idea which constituted one of the milestones of civilization so many hundreds of years ago. But that, of course, takes us to, because things are never that easy, to a more complicated question, which is, dura lex sed lex, hard law, although law, is this correct? Is equality under the law enough? Or must there be some sort of minimum justice inherent, some elements in the law which are non-controversial and which are outside not only the hands of the king, but also outside the hands of the people, because they constitute minimum rights that everyone should uphold. And one of the lowest moments in humankind, which is probably, there have been many low moments, but perhaps one of the lowest was no doubt the World War I, one of the main, perhaps first global conflict, although it wasn't global as this pandemic has been, it was indeed global. And the destruction and pain that war caused across the globe gave rise to the organization which first constituted a true global attempt at building a community of nations founded on peace and values beyond what would be a blank sheet or a merely formal definition of the rule of law. If one reads the covenant of the League of Nations established in 2020, one finds very interesting matters. For example, the fact that it referred not only to the solution of controversies between countries by means of arbitration and fair trial, but also it spoke of good work conditions. It spoke of the protection of native inhabitants, the protection of minorities, the protection of global health. This is in 1920. That sounds very much like Sustainable Development Goals, doesn't it? And that was a long time ago. So this was the League of Nations, and it so happens that the League of Nations is exactly where UNIDROIT, the organization I'm proud to represent here, was founded. We were founded almost 100 years ago in 1926 as a satellite of the League of Nations, and therefore I think as a representative I can talk about the rule of law and I can talk about sustainable development, because there is no other organization alive which comes from the League of Nations that first time when this was considered. So the idea of UNDRA as a part of the League of Nations was that of moving towards the legal harmonization of private law, which would foster economic development, the idea that legal harmonization of private law would also help serve as a vehicle of social integration amongst equals. And not just any type of development, a sustainable and fair one. So this is where we come from. A more difficult question, however, is how to do this. Sustainable goals, you can all think, are mostly public law-related goals because they are to be defined by the regulator. They are to be defined by the governments who need to endorse them and foster them and take care of them. However, we know and we're convinced that also through private law, this is something which we can be achieved. But since we are not, we are an organization with 63 member states which represent about 75% of the world population, over 90% of the GDP of the world, therefore a large organization in a way, although we are small in size with a big heart though. Obviously we cannot legislate internationally. What we do with our sister organizations and other similar international organizations is we try to come up with best practices and standards which can then indirectly be translated into law at a local or international level. So, and we do this by means of two types of instruments. One of them is hard law instruments, and another one is soft law instruments. And hard law instruments, you will all immediately think, well, this is the best thing. UNISRA or other organization comes up with a treaty which endorses sustainable development goals, and therefore, because it's hard law, it becomes automatically applicable in all the jurisdictions. Well, that's all very well, and I cannot contradict that, and I would not contradict that. But the truth is that treaties are extremely difficult to negotiate and to approve. And if they do have not only private law matters, but also matters which concern economy and the cession of sovereignty, it becomes the more difficult. Let me give you the example of our latest treaty, the MAC Protocol to the Cape Town Convention, on something as non-controversial as facilitating access to cheap credit for tractors and machinery in the area of mining, agriculture and construction. What can be less political than that? What can be less controversial than that? Well, it took us 13 years to negotiate and approve that treaty. So you can think how difficult it is nowadays to come up with hard law solutions, even in the sphere of private law, which can actually make a difference. So it is very possible that moving forward, treaties will be confined to situations in which public interest is involved, meaning procedural rules or rules which concern formal mechanisms, or elements that are covering mostly cross-border relationships. So the future of transnational law and the future of creating a legal order internationally which complies with sustainable goals is in the realm of soft law. And soft law is not as soft as it seems. It's more law than it is soft if it's adequately defined and is adequately applied. The model laws that some of our organizations create become domestically, as they are incorporated, national law, and therefore become hard law immediately. And those are easier to negotiate, they are technical, and they have been growing in number and in importance in the last years. Many of the most important countries in the world, many of the developing countries, most of the developing countries, I say, are using soft law instruments, which are soft at the origin, but hard when they are implemented domestically. And this, when it comes to sustainable development, has created two questions which I, unfortunately, deem very difficult to solve. And I am reaching out to all of you, no doubt more brilliant than me, to try to come up with an answer to this difficult two-layer paradigm or metaphor. One of them is the all or none paradox, which is if you are introducing or proposing to introduce certain rules which are aimed at facilitating and enhancing sustainable development, you are no doubt, in a way, curtailing the adoption of business decisions which have only one finality, which is more efficiency and more benefit. So what you're actually doing is creating some costs in the production and distribution process. So if some countries do incorporate those, but others don't, and we have a cross-border open free trade system to some extent, what we're creating is a competitive disadvantage. So the idea is, in order for all of us to have sustainable development, in order to have a competitive system which incorporates sustainable development, in truth, what would be best is that there is no competition at the sustainable development level, so that everyone is compliant with those minimum standards that are required. Because if some comply and some don't, then there's unfair competition and the system just doesn't work. And of course, the whole system pulls towards not complying with these sustainable goals. But as I just said, to have a system which is a hard law and applicable throughout is very difficult. So that's a difficult question to solve. But it's not the only one. There is also an inherent limitation in its alternative, which is the soft law. Some countries might think this is an unaffordable luxury for some, while, for example, in fully developed markets, consumers of a company or clients of a company might be prepared to pay a premium for a product which comes from a company or from a business that is compliant with sustainable goal requirements, which is respectful of gender equality, which is respectful of adequate treatment of employees, which is environmentally neutral and friendly, which, as I said, creates costs, while some more developed countries are prepared to do that and their markets are ripe enough to implement that system. There are developing countries and poorer nations which don't have the luxury to do that, because if they do that, then they cannot compete, because of the low level of development, the main objective of the production is lowering the price so that people can actually survive. So, in other words, is this a first world, and apologies for the inadequate terminology, the more economically developed world luxury? Is it not? This is something that is not easy to answer, and it's even more difficult to provide a solution to. So this is, however, something which, unfortunately, transnational law institutions cannot give an answer to. So I'm leaving up to you for further reflection. The way we work towards the achievement and the creation of instruments which would promote sustainable development is through harmonization of transnational law. And here I'd like to again share a reflection with you all, because some of you might say, but why should we move towards harmonization of the law? Some countries internally, which have different laws depending on their different internal states, think, for example, of the United States, which has different regulation depending on each state, not in every case, but in many cases, have argued internally, some of its academics, that it's better that there is competition between regulation rather than harmonizing these matters, because then it's the market or the users of the system that ultimately decide which is the best system, and that's the one that should be applied throughout. We, of course, as transnational law organization, disagree with this approach. And we disagree not so much because we don't think that we need to give the voice to the users of the law to decide which is the best system, but because we do it in a way which is channeled adequately and harnessed. So the way we, at UNIDROIT, for example, produce our instruments is by inviting a global range of experts from all legal families, from all countries. We invite them to come and share their expertise. And we invite observers from all over the world. And we invite the industry, those that will apply the treaty or the soft law instrument. So we hear them out, and we put together all that information, and there is an open discussion. So the input from the users doesn't happen already when the law is out there in the market, but it happens in an internal process, therefore before. Therefore, the final instrument is already ready to reflect the preferences of the users of the system. So this let's say, discrepancy or doubt which you might have had about transnational law organization exists not, if you know how it works. Let me give you then a few examples, and I promise not to bore you too much. I already have bored you a bit, but not too much on how we, as an organization, and our instruments comply with Sustainable Development Goals. And here, of course, we are using the UN catalogue. I've just provided a few of those. We, no doubt, through our instruments, are able to work towards no poverty because we work on growth and economic growth. We are very much focused also on zero hunger through a number of our instruments, which is, of course, zero hunger directly related to no poverty. It's just a different level of that terrible part of human reality. We are very much concerned with gender equality, not only in our legal production process, but also in the content of our instruments. We are extremely focused on 8 and 9, therefore on decent work and economic growth. Many of our, as you will see now, private law and agriculture instruments are precisely about having decent growth, decent work, and allowing for a growth which is sustainable also locally and considering the individual rights of the peoples in countries where their rights are not granted. Industrial growth, also adequate industrial growth, and industrial growth which is sustainable. Because you will indulge me if I use an expression from my part of the world. If we don't grow in a sustainable manner, we are creating something which is called bread for today, hunger for tomorrow. It's a short-term view of things, which is absolutely inadequate. And therefore, or we grow sustainably, or we just stay as we are. 13th, climate action. Our instruments are very much concerned with ensuring environmental concerns are taken seriously and respected by, in many ways, internalizing the costs of environmental damage of economic growth. We also, of course, spend quite a lot of resources, as many as we have, which are few, in ensuring there is adequate institutional implementation. And because the truth is, and this is a very important message I'd like to convey today, we can have the best laws, we can make the most perfect treaties, we can have the most absolutely perfect, platonic soft law, model laws, but if the judges, if the lawyers, if the authorities are not capable of understanding them and implementing them, they're good for nothing. They're just black-letter law which is good to be left in a drawer of a ministry. So the effort needs to go, and this is not only our concern, but it should also be the concern of the ministries in all countries to ensure that you come up with good legislation, but you invest, and invest a lot in capacity building and in ensuring that your institutional framework is of excellence. This is something which happens already in Hong Kong, which is famous for its excellent institutions, but this is not the rule around the world. And without that, it's difficult to achieve a good result. So let me be a little bit more specific on some of our instruments and how they help achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. We've spoken at length this week about the Cape Town Convention, one of the most successful commercial treaties in history, and how they can help achieve the goals, both directly and indirectly. Of course, this is a treaty which facilitates access to credit. and it facilitates access to credit in 4 different spheres or sectors, 4 different types of assets: aircraft, railroad or railway, rolling stock, space, and mining, agriculture, and construction. And for those of you who would like to get more into detail, we are, of course, fully available. I will just like to focus on 2 of them, on the railway protocol. The idea of developing the railway system, and it couldn't be more linked, more directly relevant to sustainable goals. It could not be more directly linked with environmental concerns. I remember very well, we in the Rail Protocol, for example, it was ratified by the European Union and all its 27 member states, but also has enormous support from the African countries. We have the the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. I remember its representative in Nairobi, and my colleague and friend Anna Veneziano was there. He said, "My dream is to connect all African capitals by train." He was convinced that doing that, the development of Africa would be assured for generations. And if we look at the Belt and Road Initiative and the possibility of, from China, casting a network of railway which is able to transport not only merchandise but also people through substituting the very contaminating and dangerous transport by road, is indeed a very important a goal which we're hopeful will start paying its dividends very soon. So our Luxembourg Protocol is of the essence for sustainable development. I'd like to make also a special reference, if this allows me, to our most recent protocol, the Mining, Agriculture and Construction Protocol. This will allow, there are many reasons why this is important for sustainable development. One of them, of course, is because it allows to renew the fleets of equipment in agriculture. It allows to access newer technology, newer tractors, newer cranes, newer machinery, which allows for agriculture and construction industries to replace the very contaminating machinery which has been used for years in many countries. And this can be a game changer, not only in fostering fostering growth in the agricultural world, but also in industrial activity, which is fed directly from the work of agricultural entrepreneurs which benefit from the MAG protocol. We have a number of guides which we drafted together with the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and the International Fund for Agricultural Development. Obviously, we do nothing with them which is not fully in line and pursuing the Sustainable Development Goals. I just saw the 5-minute a warning, therefore there's no way I can tell you all I wanted to tell you, and that's all right, all very well. But I'd just like to mention a few things. One of them is, of course, our legal guide on contract farming, our legal guide on agricultural land investment contracts, and our work currently on legal structures of agricultural enterprises are key because in their development we are considering gender issues, we are considering the inclusion of due diligence elements before the investment takes place in the way in which contracts are designed. We are allowing for elements we would otherwise not be considered to be taken into consideration. For example, the protection of rightful tenure right holders. If you invest in land for agricultural use, you have to respect those that were in the land for generations, even if informally. This is something very important in some regions of the world, such as, for example, Africa or Latin America, with indigenous people there for hundreds of years, which must be respected. I'd like to make a final reference to two of our projects which we are about to start working on, for which we would very much appreciate the help of Hong Kong, of course, the People's Republic of China, and of all the countries in the room, which is our work, first of all, on corporate sustainability due diligence in global value chains. Our instruments are now focusing not on a bilateral relationship, but rather on the entire supply chain, both horizontally and vertically, and by doing so we are including and helping produce clauses that ensure respect for sustainable development goals in the business which is done through the supply chain. And one final project which we are about to start, we have enormous enthusiasm about, is the work on the development of a market for voluntary carbon credit. This is something which we've started following the work that's done by the Task Force for Scaling Voluntary Markets for Carbon Credits. Of course, this will ensure that there is more direct private financing for climate action. There's biodiversity protection, there is pollution prevention, there is public health improvements and job creations in a sector which is key. And the growth of carbon credit markets in the coming years is going to be spectacular. No one denies that. And it fails. There is no rigorous private law analysis of what those carbon credits are and how they are to be traded, how they are to be used as collateral, how they are to be used in private law. And this is what we will be doing. Where I am from, and I'm finishing, which is the westernmost part of the Mediterranean, the southernmost part of Europe, we have a saying, which is that gratitude is the exclusive feature of righteous souls. I do not think I have a righteous soul, but I certainly aspire to it. So if you will indulge me, I would like to show my gratitude. One final word for Secretary of Justice Lam, for Deputy Secretary of Justice Choing, for Dr. Ding, and for the entire team of the Department of Justice, for the Secretary of Justice and Department of Justice, of Hong Kong SAR, for their impeccable organization, their extreme efficiency, and their absolute kindness. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor TIRADO, for the inspiring keynote speech. Please be seated. Before we move on to the first panel section of today, we will have a 10 minutes break. Please take your valuables with you whenever you leave this hall, and please enjoy the refreshments in rooms N204 to N210, which is just opposite of this conference hall, and return to this hall before the start of the first panel section in 10 minutes. So for online participants, there is no need for you to log out. And ladies and gentlemen, enjoy your 10-minute break and see you back very soon. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, our first panel section will commence shortly, so please kindly make your way back to the conference hall as we would like to start the first panel section on time. Thank you. 咁多位嘉賓，我哋咧今日接住落嚟第一場嘅專題研討咧，即將開始啦。喺呢個時候咧，我哋有請啦喺我哋會場外面嘅嘉賓啊，都可以立即移步翻嚟我哋會場嘅位置，咁等我哋啦可以咧準時啦，同埋可以順利開始我哋第一個嘅專題研討嘅。多謝咁多位。Ladies and gentlemen, our first panel section will now commence, so please make your way back to the hall and please be seated as soon as possible. Thank you. A gentle reminder, please kindly switch your mobile phones or any electronic devices to silent mode. 咁多位嘉賓，我哋第一場嘅專題研討咧，立即就會開始啦。所以咧，我哋有請咁多位嘉賓啊，可以移步嚟返到我哋會場嘅位置。多謝合作。Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the morning section of today's Congress. And now we will have our first panel section on the rule of law, a bedrock for success for all sectors. And on stage, we're delighted to have our moderator and also speakers for today. And taking this opportunity, let me introduce them to all of you. First, we have Mr. C.M. Chan as our moderator. A big round of applause to welcome Mr. Chan. Mr. Chan is the president of the Law Society of Hong Kong. And joining us on stage, we have four distinguished speakers. They are Mr. Dixon Wong, Mr. Edward Liu, Mr. Paul Starr, and Dr. Henrietta Choi Leung. Welcome. Before I officially pass the stage and also the time to our moderator, Mr. Chan, I would like to remind everyone that we will have a question and answer section after the panel discussion. If you have any questions, please write them down on the paper provided to you and pass them to our crew members. You may also scan the QR code for Q&A and type your questions via the link. For online participants, you can simply type your questions directly in the chat box at the bottom of the screen, and we will address your questions together at the Q&A section. So I guess our moderator is now ready. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, over to you, our moderator, Mr. CM Chan.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished speakers, friends from the legal sector and other sectors. I'm thrilled to be here to moderate. I'm told that I can take off my mask, right? Well, I think, in fact, we can all take off our masks on stage. But anyway, this is a rule of law session, so let's stick to the rule. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here to moderate this very interesting session, as the rule of law is the bedrock of success for Hong Kong. We all know that. So we look at it from a different angle. We have a very, very diverse panel here with us today, from maritime law expert, construction law expert, investment law expert, investment expert, and arts and culture. So very, very interesting. Really look forward to the discussion. I'll just give you a few pointers, remarks before I let the real speakers speak. We all know that the rule of law is the cornerstone of Hong Kong's success as a leading international commercial and financial center, providing a secure environment for individuals and organizations and a level playing field for business. Hong Kong consistently ranked high globally in regard to rule of law and judicial independence. In 2021, the Institute for Management Development put Hong Kong in the 8th place globally in terms of the fair administration for justice in its World Competitiveness Ranking. In the latest edition of the World Justice Report, Rule of Law Index, issued just 2 weeks ago, I think, Hong Kong attained the 6th place in East Asia and the Pacific, and 22nd out of 140 countries and jurisdictions worldwide. But what does the term rule of law actually mean? I think Secretary General TIRADO mentioned in his remarks speech, there's actually no universal definition for the term rule of law. Very interestingly, he mentioned, look at the history. In fact, Aristotle also mentioned the term of rule of law. Lord Bingham, of course, had his 8 points, important points about the rule of law. So we all have very different definition on the term. For today's purpose, at least for me, I would like to look at the rule of law concepts from 3 important aspects. Number 1, a rule-based society, so that the government or citizens at large will not have a lot of discretion. So there's a rule-based for people to follow. The second one, as mentioned by the Chief Justice, judicial independence. I think everybody agrees that that's a very core element in a rule-based society, in a rule of law environment. The third point I would like to think is the point about equality, equal before the law. I think to me, I'm not saying that I'm excluding other elements of the rule of law, but to me, for today's purpose, I would like perhaps to focus more on these 3 points in our discussion later. We will explore, of course, these various aspects of the rule of law from the maritime, construction, arts, wealth management angles. And perhaps this is the time to briefly introduce our speakers. Mr. Edward Liu, partner of Hai Wen and Partners LLP, and the principal representative of the China Liaison Office, International Chamber of Shipping. Dr. Henrietta True Leung, Honorary Chair and President Emeritus of Hong Kong Arts Gallery Association, as well as a founder of Gallery Aura. Mr. Paul Starr, partner of King & Wood Mallesons, and Mr. Dixon Wong, Head of Financial Services and Global Head of Family Office of Invest Hong Kong. So in a minute, I'll invite our distinguished speakers to share their valuable experiences and thoughts regarding how important the rule of law in Hong Kong is for their respective sectors to flourish, and how each and every one of us can contribute to safeguarding the rule of law in Hong Kong. So I think we have a very strict time limit, 15 minutes to each speaker, and then we have a Q&A session. And if you have any questions, please by all means hand it over to the staff, and we will try to answer your questions. So without further ado, I'm going to invite the first speaker, Mr. Edward Liu, to come on the stage. Edward, please.
Thank you, moderator, for your very kind introduction. My fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is my great pleasure to be here, to speak at this Rule of Law Congress. The Rule of Law is no doubt, as our Chief Executive, Secretary of Justice, and also Chief Justice and our President of the Law Society mentioned, a value cherished by most of us, and needless to say, a backbone for the success of all sectors. As the first speaker of this panel, I dare to teach fish how to swim by straying into the discussion on how the rule of law contributes to the flourish of their respective sectors. And soon you will listen to their insightful and interesting sharings. Rather, as the maritime lawyer and also the principal representative of the International Chamber of Shipping, China Legal Office, I'd like to spark off this discussion by sharing my thoughts on my area of expertise, shipping and maritime legal services. I shall share a topic close to my heart, the prosperity of Hong Kong shipping, the foundation of our success and our achievement in recent years. Hong Kong's status as a premier international maritime center in the Asia-Pacific region and beyond has been consistently recognized. According to the 2022 Xinhua Baltic International Shipping Center Development Index report, Hong Kong ranked the 4th in the overall ranking of the maritime cities in the world. Hong Kong is also widely known as one of the top 3 most desirable arbitration venues for shipping disputes, alongside London and Singapore. So from a small village, fishing village, to the present days, Hong Kong's shipping industry is no doubt a story of success. But beyond the scene, what does this prosperity build on? From my point of view, I believe also that you would agree, it stems from the Hong Kong's rule of law and the common law system, for it being the cornerstone of our shipping industry and all other businesses in Hong Kong. As we all know, the rule of law runs in the city's vein and is carved in her constitution. Since Hong Kong's reunification with China, a constitutional order was established with one country, two systems. Under this unique constitutional order, Hong Kong's practice of the common law has been maintained and developed. And quite actually contrary to many speculations, which are definitely wrong, the Central People's Government treasures Hong Kong's rule of law and the judicial independence more than anywhere else, and it is always committed to safeguarding the rule of law in Hong Kong. In his very important speech given at the meeting marking the 25th anniversary of Hong Kong's return to China, President Xi Jinping expressly stated that the executive and the legislative branches check and balance and cooperate with each other while the judiciary exercises its power independently. When he described the implementation of the principle of one country, two systems. In the same address, President Xi also stated that the central government fully supports Hong Kong in maintaining the common law as its distinctive status and one of its edges. President Xi's emphasis in his address reassured the world that Hong Kong's rule of law has the support from the central government, not only in the past, but also in the days to come. Of course, in his speech, he also addressed again that the support Hong Kong to maintain and enhance its status as an international shipping center alongside with the financial and trade centers. So the existence of the rule of law is vital to the shipping industry, and as a world-renowned city with her rule of law respected and protected by China, Hong Kong has gained her advantage in being a global shipping hub that attracts shipping companies around the world to operate in Hong Kong. In the times of uncertainty and instability, the certainty offered by Hong Kong, our city's rule of law, is no doubt highly sought after the traders and the businessmen around the world. So a vivid example is that with the appreciation of Hong Kong's rule of law and the common law system, well preserved by the principle of one country, two systems, the 100-year-old International Chamber of Shipping, the most influential trade union for global ship owners and operators, representing around 80% of the world's merchant tonnage, has chosen to set up its first overseas office in Hong Kong in 2019. And of course, I took the privilege to be the first principal representative of this office. Yet, successfully attracting the ICS to set up its China liaison office in Hong Kong is the only tip of the iceberg of what our city's maritime cluster has achieved in recent years. Under the policy support of the Hong Kong government, Hong Kong's maritime high-value services have been developing in high speed. In 2020, Hong Kong government published the highly welcomed ship leasing tax concession ordinance, which contains profits tax concessions for qualifying ship lessors and ship leasing managers. In the gist, certain qualifying ship leasing income are exempted from profits tax, providing a boost to the city's ship leasing industry's development. Similarly, tax concessions for insurance-related business were also introduced, reducing the profits tax rate by 50% of all generation reinsurance and insurance business for the maritime-related industry. Apart from the government policy support, Hong Kong's maritime high-value services are also supported by a strong pool of legal talent. The ship leasing and maritime insurance industry do not live in a vacuum. Instead, they form a cluster that is supported by the maritime legal service providers. So according to the leading maritime cities of the world 2022, Hong Kong is home to 30 maritime law firms, ranking top 10 in the world. Needless to say, a city with many experts attracts more business to the city for her strong knowledge. Supported by the government policy and the strong pool of talent, we have seen an increase of around 70 maritime enterprises in Hong Kong from 2019 to 2021, with business ranging from ship owning and operating, ship agency and management, ship brokering, ship finance, marine insurance, maritime legal and arbitration services, classification society. So, alongside other high-value maritime services, I'm now turning to the maritime legal service, has also taken one step further in recent years to boost her competitiveness. Hong Kong has long been a popular dispute resolution venue for Chinese companies and foreigners who are in business with Chinese companies due to its proximity with the mainland China. Thanks also to our foundation of the rule of law and the common law system, the city's alternative dispute resolution has been increasingly recognized in the international community in recent years. Principles of the rule of law are also embedded in our city's arbitration process. For example, in 2015, Mr. Justice Hamblin, now Lord Hamblin of the UK Supreme Court, famously stated in the leading arbitration jurisdictional dispute case, Shagang South Asia Hong Kong Trading Co. Limited and Daewoo Logistics, that, quote, Hong Kong is no doubt geographically convenient. It is also a well-known and respected arbitration forum with a reputation for neutrality, not least because of its supervising courts, unquote. And I have the special feeling, well, this quote actually has been quoted by many, many people, but I have the special feeling for this case because I was one of the case handlers acting for the successful applicant and arguing that Hong Kong was the arbitration venue chosen by the parties in that case. So another example is that in 2020, the Baltic International Maritime Council, BIMCO, another leading shipping organization which specializes in promoting global standard forms, has also included Hong Kong in its revised arbitration clause as one of the 4 named arbitration venues alongside London, New York, and Singapore. This recognition from the international community, especially for the shipping industry, is a considerable step forward for Hong Kong's increased role in international shipping dispute resolution. So in the 15th five-year plan, the central government expressly supported Hong Kong to develop into an international shipping and trade center, as well as an international legal and dispute resolution hub, by proactively strengthening and developing Hong Kong's ties with the Great Bay Area and the Belt and Road Initiative. Therefore, Hong Kong has successfully entered into a number of arrangements with mainland China in recent years to make herself even more attractive in the eyes of businesses looking to resolve disputes, such as in November 2020, the supplemental arrangement concerning mutual enforcement of arbitral awards was between Hong Kong and mainland China, and the which parties granted an arbitral award can now commence enforcement proceedings in both jurisdictions simultaneously. In addition, the arrangement concerning mutual assistance in court-ordered interim measures in adult arbitration proceedings by the courts of the mainland and Hong Kong has also came into force in 2019, making Hong Kong the only jurisdiction in the world to be able to enforce interim measures ordered by her own country, a court in the mainland China, or the other way around. So, and you will listen more about this kind of arrangement and arbitration from my panel colleague, Paul, later. So such privileged position of Hong Kong alongside other arbitration developments, such as allowing third-party funding in arbitration and the outcome-related fee structure for arbitration, has undoubtedly raised her competitiveness for shipping dispute resolution as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, building upon our rule of law as the foundation, we have made incredible achievements that has put us in an advantageous position amongst our competitors. However, word around town is that our city is losing her edge as a world-class shipping hub. This is definitely not true. And it's true on the other side that our competitors are rising around the region. But we are in no position to sell ourselves short. Through my sharing, I wish to remind all of us, and I believe that you can have a brief understanding of our successful story and achievements that they have made along the way. Building on our rule of law, together with the central government support, I'm very confident that Hong Kong shipping will continue to thrive. Thank you for your kind attention. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Edward. It's an excellent speech. I'm particularly impressed with your citation of Lord Hamblin, which is so encouraging to all of us. So without further ado, I would now like to invite our second speaker, Dr. Henrietta Cho Leung, to talk about from an arts and law point of view. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, my fellow panelists and moderator, Mr. Chan. Thank you so much for inviting me to come and join you for this Congress. It is my great pleasure to speak to you this morning about art and its market, both globally and locally, and the significance of the rule of law to the development of art and culture. Cultural industries in Hong Kong. Many of you may already know that in the past decade, Hong Kong has grown to become one of the most important art hubs in the world. But let's dive deeper into this and look how a healthy legal system may support its development in the long run. So first, I will brief you on the current art market situation and why Hong Kong is important. We will also take a look at how the rule of law supports. We'll also take a look at how the rule of law supports the forms as important foundation of the health of an important art hub like Hong Kong. We then discover the growing importance of online art market and its implication to the rule of law. Nowadays, when you read and discuss about art, it seems like the topic of blockchain applications and metaverse and NFTs are very hot and should not be ignored. Let's go through that briefly. And finally, the importance and the need of legal education in the art market as Hong Kong continues to grow as an important art hub in Asia. According to the UBS Art Market Report 2022, sales of art and antique by dealers and auction houses reach an estimate of $64 billion, up by 29% from 2020, with values also surpassing the pre-pandemic levels. While all segments of the market grew in 2021, the auction sector showed the strongest year-on-year advance, with public auction sales increasing by 47%. So in order to achieve a holistic approach, the market figures should include both private and public sales, while private sales includes galleries and companies, and public auction sales as well. Since the private sales figures are always difficult to get, the figures that you are looking at and collected by the report, it's likely to be lowballed due to the difficulty to access info, and especially the information in China. In terms of the geographic distribution of art market, according to the UBS report, the US market retained its leading position, shifting up slightly to 43% of worldwide sales by value. Greater China was the second largest art market with 20%, while UK slipped back to the third place at 17%. The US art market recovered robustly in 2021, with sales increasingly by 33% to just over $28 billion, while the sales in Greater China also saw significant growth by 35%, reaching $13.4 billion. Hong Kong, as a major international art trading center, estimates over 50 to 60% of the total Greater China figures. The three major auction houses in Hong Kong, namely Christie's, Sotheby's, Phillips, together accumulated over $2 to $3 billion of sales last season. There are over 100 art galleries in Hong Kong, including the top 4 mega galleries from the world, namely Gagosian, Hauser & Wirth, Davis Renner, and Pace. All of them have been here for over 10 years. Together with the other local and international galleries, we basically represent most, if not all, of the top and emerging artists from around the world. Hong Kong, as an important art market, art making and trading hub will not be easily replaceable due to our zero tax structure in art, efficient logistics support, growing art management talent, and language efficiencies in English and Chinese and more. So why is Hong Kong such an important art hub in the world, in Asia? Is it related to the rule of law? While Hong Kong's commercial contracts are mostly based on common law, lawyers and professionals understand Chinese law as well, and its legal system relatively well, and therefore provide support for art galleries and auction houses which conduct business in the mainland. Hong Kong is truly a super connector between China and the rest of the world, as I described before, and the position is very hard to be replaced. There are multi-tiered dispute resolution clauses and arbitration channels in Hong Kong, which are transparent and efficient. In terms of contract law, there are multiple contracts, like we draft multiple contracts on a daily basis, including project commissions to artists, engagement agreements with different companies and organizations. When there's a deal or M&A, there will be non-disclosure agreements in discussion, and also between galleries and other galleries. We often enjoy viewing multi-million-dollar worth of masterpieces at the major auction houses previews, because it is very common that the auction houses will secure guarantee sales before they actually bring the work to Hong Kong. So finally, the transparent legal system really helped facilitate the confidence of Hong Kong companies to secure business deals with the partners from around the world. As reported by the SCMP, in the most recent policy address, our Chief Executive, Mr. John Lee, has promised to revitalize the music and art scene and highlight the city's unique position of East and West fusion. It is really an encouraging news, and this is why it is of utmost importance that the government builds a cultural commission which really understands both the art industry and not just the art creating group and the museum. Without a healthy and vibrant art cultural industry, which can be self-sustainable, the art scene would become a purely public-funded program with no actual economic return to society. However, to build a healthy art and cultural industry, much more research and discussions will be needed, including legal support. During the prolonged COVID new normal, collectors and art buyers are getting used to online transactions, which enables this area to continue to grow. According to the UBS Art Report again, the online market continued to expand in 2021, growing by 7% to reach an estimation of 13.3 billion. Online sales accounted for 20% of the sales in the art market, and down by 5% on the year-on-year share, and to the level of 2019. Outside of the art markets, US $65 billion in turnover, sales of art and collectible in NFT also saw substantial growth in 2021. External sales in these two categories of NFT platforms on Ethereum, Flow, and Robin blockchains, etc., have grown from 4 million to over 11.1 billion in 2021. The value of the sales of art-related NFTs expanded over 100-fold year-on-year sales. The online market continued to expand, growing by more than 7% by 2021, in 2021 to an estimated 13.3 billion. With the increased online sales, the legal issues arising from the jurisdiction also arise. According to the report, which was very well explained, while sales of art and collectibles of NFT spiked, legal issues surrounding these 2021 digital projects were a moving target, as the legal consequences caught up with the business and technological development. Apart from the contractual issues with NFT platforms, terms and conditions, the development of the blockchain code smart contracts and the incorporation into the current legal frameworks, and many novel and complex tax, intellectual property, authenticity, and securities issues arose in 2021 and will require complex legal solutions. Different areas from the legal world to note. Smart contracts in Ethereum and other blockchains with codes to replace legal contracts with buyers and sellers are setting the terms in codes to be automatically distributed when the conditions are met. Cybercrimes, stolen NFTs, hackers are roaming around platforms like OpenSea, Sandbox, hackers to update their programs. So many of these platforms and blockchain builders have to race against hackers to update their programs to be cybercrime proof. In terms of intellectual properties, many artworks and images are adapted or directly used in creation of NFTs for enjoyment or for sale. Since the wallet holders are anonymous, it is often impossible to track down these frauders or stealers. In terms of custodians of digital wallets, there are different institutions, including charities and NGOs, who are very interested and want to take part in the metaverse to divest their funding sources. However, there are not many safe and well-regulated and managed custodian digital wallets available. In terms of financial products in Web3, there are a lot of creative financial experts and passionate who are interested in creating decentralized asset-backed tokens, including asset-like properties, art, whiskey, precious stones, etc. Fractionalization is also another hot topic in development, yet these products involves SFC and other authorities and regulatory framework to support, to protect public interest. All these will depend on the advancement of law to advance with technology. The regulatory framework by SFC and other authorities to support the development of Web3-based financial products and public offerings are imminent. Finally, I want to touch upon legal education and an interpretation of art market. Many artists from Hong Kong are and also from studio practice and art, unlike myself, and most of them are not familiar with the complicated contract structures and protection of their rights. However, as art market continues to grow and Hong Kong continue to become the major art hub of Asia and the world, it is important that artists can have some basic training in contract drafting and the understanding of contract. While basic law and the national security law are very important foundations of Hong Kong, many local and international galleries and artists may not have a good understanding how to apply them in their daily practices. Also, to understand where the red line is. Therefore, education in explaining the laws and the implication to the art market and the art community to build clarity is of utmost importance for the market to continue to flourish and attract foreign investments into Hong Kong art market. Collaboration, for example, between the law society and the art industry may be an interesting point to note for the industries to understand each other's needs. A suggestion could be creating focus groups, workshops, reach out to our community with over 100 galleries and thousands of artists under our wing who are represented by Hong Kong to also create Hong Kong as a major important art law hub. So that's my short presentation. Thank you very much for letting me share with you my views.
Thank you, Henrietta. Thank you. Excellent presentation, giving us a snapshot of why Hong Kong has become, I can say that, right? Hong Kong has become an art hub, not only in Asia, in the world. In particular, I'm so impressed about the reason, the rationale behind that. Common law, using of common law in contracts, in art dealings. And also you mentioned the language. Of course, Article 9 of the Basic Law guarantees that on top of Chinese, we can also use English as an official language in Hong Kong. That's immensely important for Hong Kong going forward. Thank you, Henrietta, again. So next up, Paul, may I give the floor to you?
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you to the DOJ for inviting me. Now, what is the connection between Hong Kong's rule of law and Hong Kong gin? This is a gin called Nip. I've got one here called Two Moons, made in Hong Kong. And this one, Perfume Trees, this is distilled in Holland but bottled in Hong Kong. And the connection is, of course, that while many of us don't even appreciate that Hong Kong actually makes gin, so business people don't appreciate fully the unique advantages of Hong Kong's rule of law when doing business anywhere around the world. And that is what I'm going to try and make good today. Now, why am I pouring myself a gin? And a tonic that's made in Hong Kong. This is a Hong Kong tonic. And of course, the answer is that I've been put on this program as an innovation and technology lawyer, which I'm not. I'm actually a construction lawyer. And while we have a lot of innovation and technology in construction, I'm not going to be able to talk very much about cryptocurrency and blockchain today. So I have to apologize in advance for that. And as I can't even open it, I won't trouble myself. I'll do it later. So, what I thought I would do today is a case study. And although the case study is a construction case study, I want to emphasize I'm not really talking about the construction aspects. I want to really address business people and say that some of the examples I give you, you can apply on your contracts when you're doing business, I think, anywhere around the world. And it's a study which I actually did on the Belton Road. I've obviously disguised the parties in the country. It's not the same country. But basically, it was a renewable wind project. So renewable, I'm an innovation lawyer. I can use the word renewable, thank goodness. A Chinese SOE and doing business with a Latin American company. And trying to build this project. And of course, at the beginning of any construction project, everyone is kissy-kissy, lots of things in the newspapers about everyone loves each other. The partners loved each other at the beginning of this project. But what actually happened? Well, as I'm afraid often happens on construction projects, there were delays and labour issues. There were faults and poor production quality at the local country factory. The Latin American government agency refused the license for a long period, so the project got stalled, and eventually the JV employer evicted the contractor from the site. Now, on the real case, allegedly there were shots fired. The workers actually had to flee the site under fire, but in the arbitration, the employer claimed that was fake news, that my client had somehow manufactured the video, so it was a very interesting arbitration, i.e. they all hated each other by the end of the project. So both parties accusing the other of fault, and they're in dispute, and what should they do? Well, it's at the negotiation stage of a project that one has to think, in my opinion, about Hong Kong and the rule of law. Because what I'm really saying is you should think very seriously about a Hong Kong arbitration clause from one of the 6 qualifying institutions. I'll introduce them in a moment. What the actual parties did on my dispute, they chose New York law and they chose Singapore arbitration. So I asked my client, why did you do that? And they said, oh, we never looked at the clause. We just took it from a precedent. We used New York law and Singapore arbitration. Nothing wrong with that. But there are more unique advantages for Hong Kong. And my message is where you're contracting with a mainland party, with assets in China mainland, where you are a mainland party, and in my opinion, even where there are disputes not involving mainland parties, you should think about a Hong Kong qualifying arbitration clause. And there are many reasons why to choose Hong Kong, and I haven't got time to go through. Some have been, of course, illustrated by the Chief Executive, the Secretary for Justice, and other speakers this morning, and also my pre-speakers. But I want to concentrate on the bottom 3, both of which have been introduced by Edward earlier. I want to concentrate about the new interim measures arrangement, and if I've got time, a little bit about enforcement as well. Now, at the bottom of that slide are the 6 qualifying arbitration institutions you can choose. For example, HKIAC and CTAC are 2 of the 6, and also EBRAM and ICC, to give you 4 examples. And what this means is, if you choose one of these institutions to found your arbitration, that at the very beginning of an arbitration, in theory before it starts, but many Chinese courts prefer it to have started, but at the very start of an arbitration, you can go to China, either to the mainland or indeed to Hong Kong, and get asset protection in advance of the arbitration. You can go and freeze assets and deal with other conduct preservation at the beginning of the arbitration. If you choose London or Paris or Singapore, you cannot get that advantage. Thus it was that we were the first firm to get asset protection from the Shanghai Financial Court, $400 million of asset protection at the beginning of an arbitration. I think that is still the largest single amount that has so far been granted by the China courts. But there are very, very many impressive examples. In fact, with thanks to the HKIC, I've got the statistics as of this month. 77 applications for preservation of assets, 2 for preservation of evidence, one of them is mine, to try and protect the books and records of a company, and 2 for conduct preservation, someone losing their directorship or someone losing their shareholding. Total value of assets requested, 20.5 billion. Total value actually protected, 13.3 billion renminbi out of that 20.5 billion. An amazing record, and actually a very, very powerful tool for business people in all walks of business, in my opinion. So, of course, you've got to go to a good mainland practitioner, such as Edward or indeed myself, to decide what court to apply to. You've got to get the documentation right, and you work closely with one of the 6 institutions. They have to write the letter to the Chinese court, so you work closely with them. And different in China mainland, you have to get what's called asset clues. You have to show the court that there are assets or likely to be assets, so you get in private investigators very often to do that. And Hong Kong and China mainland are the same. You have to arrange some security. In China mainland, it's usually insurance. In Hong Kong, it might be a payment into court or a bank guarantee. So quite conventional systems. Now, let's assume that each party had this dispute. They were unwilling to put funds in to actually prosecute the dispute, further dispute. This is happening more and more. I see companies with very good claims, but they don't want to spend the money actually advancing the claim. Well, in Hong Kong, we have third-party funding, which is quite common in many jurisdictions, but we also have this new structure, which the Secretary for Justice mentioned this morning, called outcome-related free structures for arbitration, or ORFSs. Now, Hong Kong has the widest possible remit of ORFSs. I did a comparison between 4 jurisdictions there. There are 3 different types of contingency fee arrangements that you can enter into. The top one is like a no fee, no win arrangement based on time charges usually, or low fee, no win. The second one is damages-based, that the law firm will get a percentage of the outcome, so you don't pay anything until the end, and if it fails, then you don't have to pay anything. And the third is a hybrid arrangement, whereby you pay some time charges or some money as you go along, and then at the outcome there is some sort of percentage uplift. Very, very creative. The rules are not yet in place, but they're coming in, I'm told, this year. Once they come in from next year, there'll be a much more flexible way of dealing with funding for litigation and for arbitration, cases. Emergency arbitration, a wonderful, wonderful procedure. I'll never forget this one because it had happened to me 5 days before Chinese New Year, which is a big holiday here in Hong Kong and in China. So it was pre-COVID, I was actually going on something called a holiday. So it ruined my holiday. But basically, my client phoned me up 5 days before Chinese New Year, wanted to save his directorship and his shareholding. He thought it was going to lose it. And therefore, we went to one of the qualifying institutions for emergency relief, which normally gives only 15 days for an emergency arbitrator to decide what they want to do. And that was the time frame. First day of Chinese New Year, the institution granted the application. They have to consider whether it's likely to be a qualifying application, emergency relief. By the Sunday of Chinese New Year, they had appointed the emergency arbitrator. It was a gentleman from a country overseas that didn't celebrate Chinese New Year, so we were quite lucky. Monday of Chinese New Year, we were having our first procedural hearing. In the old days, it was by something called phone. Now it would be something called Zoom, I suppose. Day 4, we would argue about the language. The parties hadn't put the language of the dispute into the dispute resolution clause. Please do that, whether it should be Chinese or English. So someone paid me to argue that. That was wonderful. Day 5, the parties were beginning to settle, and by day 14, with the help of the emergency arbitrator, we had a settlement. And the way it works is that the settlement lasts until it gets heard again by the actual final arbitration tribunal, normally 1 or 3 members, and they can either overturn part of it or all of it, or they can preserve it. So it's a very, very effective procedure for business people to get a quick emergency relief. And I think probably the other unique aspect I want to talk about, and Edward's touched on it, so I'm not going to repeat it, but really on areas of enforcement. Obviously, Edward's mentioned the reciprocal arrangements for arbitration. There are reciprocal arrangements for judgments coming in very soon. What I thought I would do in my last couple of minutes is talk about the unique advantages of Hong Kong for liquidators and liquidations. If you're facing a party in China mainland or in Hong Kong where there are liquidations on foot, then there is a pilot scheme now in Hong Kong, Shanghai, Xiamen and Shenzhen, so in 4 cities, whereby the liquidators of one city can apply to the courts of that city to be recognized in the courts of the other cities, i.e., a liquidator from Hong Kong can go into China mainland and start enforcing and finding assets and start enforcing matters, and vice versa. People from those pilot cities will come here to do the same. That's an amazing benefit. I think my firm has done 2 cases so far on that ground. I think that is a wonderful example of the rule of law unique to Hong Kong, if I may say so. And then just to quote one other trend, which I think we're going to complement the companies court. We have a specialized companies court in Hong Kong. Let's complement them. They're giving more and more protection, in my opinion, to unsecured creditors. Unsecured creditors are the people, unfortunately, come last in the pecking order. First come the lawyers, then come the banks, and then come the unsecured creditors. And what has recently happened is that the Hong Kong courts have refused schemes which they call light touch in other countries that don't really protect unsecured creditors. And the courts have said, no, we're going to wind the company up here in Hong Kong. It's too light touch. It's not a real, genuine scheme. To quote Madam Justice Linda Chan, it's highly undesirable for the company with a substantial net deficit to remain in operation as a going concern. Continued net deficit is prejudicial to the interests of the unsecured creditors, and the winding up order was granted. So in my 15 minutes, I don't think I've done justice, but I've tried to start talking about the unique qualities of the rule of law, and thank you very much indeed.
Take your time, Paul. You got everything? Thank you, Paul, for a very informative 15 minutes. Apart from the fact that I now know that Hong Kong actually makes gin and to a certain extent perfume. So let alone that, from the choice of law, arbitration seats in Hong Kong, qualifying institutions, these are so important, unique advantage that Hong Kong can offer all the way up to insolvency. So this is such an important aspect why Hong Kong is an important arbitration, especially relating to PRC disputes. Thank you, Paul, again. Last but not least, I would like to invite Dixon from Invest Hong Kong to deliver his presentation. Thank you, Dixon.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, moderator, my fellow panelists. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me today. Topic today is relevant, extremely relevant to us, as mentioned by the moderator, Mr. Chen, a rule-based society. My turn today is to talk about financial aspects of Hong Kong. So having heard from different experts on innovation, gene, arts and culture, and also maritime and shipping. Hopefully my topic would not, too boring compared to them. Legal and also rule of law is actually one of the key fundamentals for the development of financial markets in Hong Kong. As you can see here on the screen, we can examine closely Hong Kong's advantages, which have always been conducive to the development of financial services and family offices in Hong Kong. Our status as an international financial center, sound judicial system, robust flow of funds, freedom of entry and exit, protection of commercial activities and IP, and our low and simple tax rate, all of which serve to attract different sectors and industries to operate in the city. Hong Kong offers a wide range of financial services and family office investment opportunities and alternative assets for considerations. In particular, the role of Hong Kong as a super connector between the mainland and the international financial market can be fully utilized to create a dynamic environment for wealth creation, management, and protections. Hong Kong do not impose any VAT, GST, capital gain tax, and withholding tax on investments. Hong Kong has the relevant infrastructure and talent, as highlighted by my fellow panelists, to maintain its leadership positions, trade centers, transport centers, arbitration centers, and as a dynamic metropolitan city with a vibrant lifestyle, beautiful scenery, beaches and hiking trails, great food and cultural experience. Hong Kong also attracts talents that family offices and financial services need to thrive. On the unique advantages of Hong Kong, speaking of Hong Kong being an international financial center, according to the Boston Consulting Group, BCG, in its Global Wealth Report 2022, an annual heavyweight overview of the industry, Hong Kong is expected to take over Switzerland to become the world's largest cross-border wealth management center by asset under management, we call it AUM, in 2023. BCG also forecasts that healthy inflows to Hong Kong will be kept at an annual growth rate of 9% from now through 2026. Despite continuing pandemic tensions, our strong strengths show, despite the relentless vitality, Hong Kong's economic growth in 2021 reached 6.3%, and despite the adverse impact of the fifth wave of COVID. On IPO and capital markets, Hong Kong continues to be one of the major listings centers in the world. Last year, funds raised through IPO reached over $40 billion, and we've topped the world for 7 times in the past 13 years in terms of IPO funds raised. On PE, private equity, Hong Kong is Asia's largest private equity hub. Hong Kong is Asia's largest private equity market after mainland China by capital under management. China made up close to 40% of the Asia PE deal flows. Hong Kong is the unique conduit for international capital to tap into China's fast-growing private equity and venture capital opportunities. I think in terms of the art lifestyle, my fellow panelist, Harriet, has mentioned about the art center, the hub of Hong Kong. And art investment and connection, Hong Kong is also the largest art market in Asia and the 3rd largest art market in the world. And bear in mind, we have the Art Basel every year. And apart from art, wine tasting, as my fellow panelists highlighted, Paul, Hong Kong is also actually the largest destination of wine with 16% market share in the world. On the policy for financial services and family offices, in recent years, the Financial Services and the Treasury Bureau has devised a 3-step strategy strengthening the Hong Kong's position as a premier asset and wealth management hub, in particular for private equity and venture capital. The introduction of Limited Partnership Fund, launched in 2020, we call it LPF, offers lower setup and operational costs, as well as tax exemption on carried interest when the main investment activities of the fund are carried in Hong Kong. A simplified mechanism is also introduced late last year to facilitate the redomiciliation of foreign funds to Hong Kong, meaning it will be based onshore in Hong Kong. So the same year, the Inland Revenue also introduced the anticipated carry interest tax concession regime. The carry interest will then get zero profits tax rate. The advantage of LPF obviously reduce the operational cost, provide zero tax on carry interest, and also leveraging the Greater Bay Area opportunities from an investment and business. Hong Kong is located in the center of Asia. Our city's role as a super connector between mainland and the international market work both ways. The quality, the depth and breadth of investment between the mainland and Hong Kong is very noticeable. Global asset managers, family office, ultra-high net worth individuals can invest in the mainland via Hong Kong, and vice versa for mainland market practitioners. They can also, through Hong Kong, go into international markets. The strong talent pool for financial industry, just to highlight a few, 5 of the Hong Kong's top tertiary institutes were listed in the top 100 universities in the Times Higher Education World University Rankings 2023. The University of Hong Kong is also ranked 31st as the best in Hong Kong. The Chinese University of Hong Kong ranked 45th, rising for 3 consecutive years. Not just on the financial advantages for Hong Kong, but also in terms of the ESG and green development. Hong Kong being an international financial center, but also a center of philanthropy and impact investment. We see comprehensive ESG, environmental, social governance ecosystem with full government supports, like green bond market. We are one of the world's largest green bond markets with over $10 billion arranged and issued so far. And strong government support in terms of the various schemes, including the pilot bond grant scheme, green bond grant scheme, and also the qualifying debt instrument scheme. And in Hong Kong, we have got more than 15,000 charitable organizations registered in Hong Kong. In terms of the support from the government across policy, also the schemes, etc., here is a summary of the table how the government has, over the past 24 months, in developing and enhancing the financial service market and family office, including the LPF that I just highlighted, the dedicated family office team that the government has set it up under Invest Hong Kong. The team is dedicated to attract overseas family office, ultra-high net worth individuals, rich families from around the world, including mainland, Europe, US, and Middle East, to set up the presence in Hong Kong. So the team provides customized and also tailor-made services at no cost to these investors as a one-stop services, including work visa, facilitating the regulatory licenses with the SFC or Hong Kong MA, and also collaborate with other associations and also our stakeholders, including DOJ and also law societies. And the immigration support letter I would like to highlight a bit more because it helped facilitate the investors in terms of applying the work visas. Hong Kong is pretty straightforward. You know, if you have 7 years working here, ordinary resident in Hong Kong, then you can get the work visas approved after 7 years in Hong Kong. So you will be able to get PR, permanent residence. Compared to other cities, they've got some other different types of work visa, employment pass, PR, or even you get the PR may not be necessarily get the citizen. But Hong Kong is pretty straightforward, 7 years, transparent, simple. So our support letter will be able to help the investors. We have been discussing with Immigration Department to get the consent and also the support in terms of our support letter, so to facilitate the investors in a much more coordinated, efficient, and also fast manner. And SFC, we have also worked together with the SFC in terms of clarifying the license requirements for the multi-family office and single-family office. So in the SFC website, there is a section on Q&A which explains the most commonly asked questions, including the licenses. More importantly, apart from the LPF, a number of measures that we have highlighted, including the LPF, licenses, SFC, and the dedicated team at Invest Hong Kong, there is an upcoming proposed tax concession for family office. When it comes to help with the setting up a family office in Hong Kong, tax is always one of the considerations. So we expect the bill to be approved by LegCo end of this year. So once it's approved by LegCo, it will have the retrospective effect from 1st April this year. So this financial year will have the effect to have this tax concession. And under the proposal, we call it FIHV, Family Investment Vehicle, managed by single family office in Hong Kong, would be exempt from profits tax on certain qualifying transactions. So the bill is already published in the public domain, so feel free to have a look. Under the proposed tax concession, which hopefully will aim to attract more family office to domicile in Hong Kong, the benefit of which is very obvious because it will generate more demand for investment management and other professional services, including legal, accountants, bankers, lawyers, all these services, including trusts as well. So it will help job employments, job opportunities, as well as investment opportunities, because the size of the capital is expected to be huge. In addition to all these benefits, it will also help deepen Hong Kong's funding pool and create more business and investment opportunities for the financial industry as a whole, including private equity, venture capital industry. So the benefits for a single family office and the society, actually, why they need to set up a family office, actually, there are a lot of benefits, but in short, is to institutionalize the family business, to professionalize the family structure in a more proper way, not just on family preservation, but also on the wealth protection and generation. So it will have to engage a number of professionals, including bankers, lawyers, accountants, trust services, all these professional services. Here is a summary of our collaboration with stakeholders over the past 20 months. Our team set up last year, but have been working closely with associations, private sectors, also government bodies. Here is a summary of our support services, customized at no cost. So feel free to reach out to us if you have any investors who are interested in setting up the presence in Hong Kong. We will provide services like work visas, immigration support, license matters, as well as PR and marketing support. We have different sector teams. Myself come from the financial services and family office. We also have other sector teams like transport, creative industries, fintech, etc. That's it from me. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Dixon. And in his 15 minutes or so, given us a very good summary of why Hong Kong is a wealth management center, private equity center, even wine. I didn't know about the wine, the percentage in the world. So you learn everything every day. So more importantly, why the rule of law is an important element for Hong Kong's success. So thank you very much, Dixon. I think we are doing quite well on time, so we have roughly 15 minutes for Q&A, and I've received a whole host of questions already from the audience. And if you still have questions, by all means, put in your question online. We'll try to answer them. I think let's go to the first question to Edward. In your speech, Edward, you said that the central government treasures Hong Kong's rule of law and judicial independence more than anyone else. Are there any examples to prove your statement from this perspective?
Sure, thank you. It's a very good question, actually. We have seen first of all, from the statements from like the President Xi Jinping that I've already quoted in his very important speech. And that is, I think, the first time since Hong Kong returned to the motherland 25 years later for the top leader, number one leader, saying that Hong Kong's common law is a very important feature for Hong Kong and also the judicial independence in his speech. And secondly, also for the very top statements from the central government, like the 14th five-year plan, the Great Bay Area development outline. So all of them have specifically said that Hong Kong should maintain as the legal, and establish as a legal hub. And all that means the central government knows why Hong Kong can do it. Because for when we say about, for example, like the international financial center, shipping center, like the other cities in mainland, they are all trying to establish those kind of centers. But for the arbitration center, especially like the International Legal and Dispute Resolution Center, the only one so far recognized by the central government's documents is Hong Kong. So that means we are irreplaceable. And one more, and the last point that I would like to say is that the reason why Hong Kong is treasured, because Hong Kong's inherent nature, as part of China, as one city, as the city of China, we are, of course, no doubt connecting to the civil law system, to the mainland. But on the other hand, because based on the common law system, and common law is still the foundation of the international rules, we have the unique role to help China to go through the Maritime Silk Road, and also for the foreign investors, like all the other panel members that shared, to go through Hong Kong to mainland China. So I always say that when we say Hong Kong is a super connector, we are not just saying it, we are not naming it by ourselves. It's because of our system, our nature. So thank you.
Thank you, Edward. I'm particularly impressed with what you talk about President Xi Jinping's speech on the 1st of July. He also mentioned about the one country, two systems will continue beyond 2047, which is really reassuring for all of us here. Thank you, Edward. I think the second question, let me go to Henrietta. The question for you is, what is the role of the rule of law in the daily operation of the art market? What kinds of laws and legal matters do members of the art industry have to deal with? I think it's a very relevant question. Henrietta?
Thank you for the question, but just to clarify, I'm not a lawyer. I'm like business runner, but as I described in my presentation, definitely the rule of law is of very high connection to the art market. One, like again, a contract law, and also there are a lot of daily contracts that actually art galleries, auction houses, artists, and all different parties in the art world have to deal with. And it is important that to understand that the rule of law it's intact and that people can be comfortable to trade in Hong Kong and to collaborate with us. And it has been proven that Hong Kong is one of the top art hub, and the art world has worked really hard in the past decade to deal with that. But I have to say that, as I reiterated in the presentation, that most of the people in the art world are not very much business oriented. They are very much art and culture oriented. So they need, at the point, we're at the juncture where we need to, the reason why I'm here as well is we're at the juncture that we are big enough to attract everyone's attention and to collaborate with the art world in Hong Kong to get everybody up to the standard.
Thank you, Henrietta. Totally agree with you about the importance of the contract law, for example, which is an essential element of the common law itself. So thank you, Henrietta. Next question to Paul, I think. Yes. When parties select a jurisdiction to hear the disputes, they often want somewhere neutral, quote, neutral. That is why they select, for example, London or Singapore. So why then Hong Kong, which is part of the PRC, of course, can it be said that Hong Kong is really, quote, neutral, close quote?
I think that's an excellent question. It's something we get asked all the time as legal practitioners, isn't it, really? And it reminds me of another Belt and Road country I visited to visit, and they said their selection was let them come and arbitrate here, i.e. people who are investing in the country should go to their country to arbitrate. And I said to them, no, you're losing a unique benefit, as I've already explained, various unique benefits. And I think I could see the coin dropping, and they now write Hong Kong arbitration clauses, which is very good. But obviously it's the one country, two systems. And more specifically, it's the huge difference between common law and civil law and the independence of our judges when we need the judiciary to help us. So really, Hong Kong is completely unique. I mean, if you look at the basic law, there are very limited circumstances in which a referral can be made up to various courts in China for interpretation. I think that's only happened once or twice in the whole of Hong Kong's history. We are really, truly unique. We are very different business animals here in Hong Kong. Our law is totally different, the common law completely different to the civil law. And therefore, we are totally neutral. And I think that is something we need to keep emphasizing, CM, whenever we meet people.
Totally agree with you. And that's possible because of the one country, two systems, obviously. Thank you. There's a question for you, Dixon, as well. What can individual members of the public and the financial sector do to uphold our rule of law, and how can the rule of law be seen? It's a sort of like an abstract question.
Thank you. I think, rule of law is obviously one of the key fundamentals for financial services, and also in particular in attracting family office and ultra high net worth to come over to Hong Kong. A robust and legal regulatory framework that is so important to ensure the investor protection and the interest. So we have got financial regulators like Hong Kong MA, SFC, and also IA. They are actually the regulators to watch and make sure the rules and regulations are maintained up to date. So rule of law is absolutely the top priority for financial markets. And on the fundamentals, like why we can be international financial center, arbitration center, trade center, etc., is because of the strong and robust legal system that we have in place. I'm not an expert and I'm not a legal lawyer at all, so I will not be able to comment like Paul, Edwin, and Harriet's views. But on the financial side, I think there are specific tax concessions available for many different products, like shipping lessors, insurance, and also corporate treasury center, and upcoming the tax concession for family office target to single family office to come over to Hong Kong. So I think Hong Kong is very transparent and also very specific in terms of attracting specific products or like the tax concessions that we have across many different aspects. On the fintech space, also the new developments on virtual access, metaverse, etc. So there's a new regulations on this as well, promulgated by the SFC. But of course, all this development would have the relevant or associated risk, and that's why the rule of law is so important to the financial markets development.
Thank you, Dixon, for your sharing. I think we still have time for one final question, or maybe I should actually ask our going around the panelists to say a final few words, just to highlight one or two attributes of the rule of law that are of utmost importance to your respective industry. Edward?
Sure, thank you. Well, as I mentioned in my speech, in 2019, the International Chamber of Shipping decided to set up the office. Well, when the board of the ICS made the decision to set up the China liaison office in Hong Kong, that was made in February that year. But we all know that what has happened in that year since June. And then there were actually some debates about whether we should suspend or postpone the establishment of this China liaison office in Hong Kong. But the majority of the shipping industry, I would say, at the time supported to go ahead because they still believe that Hong Kong is the city well protected by the rule of law. And they know the system, they know the legal system, and they believe Hong Kong will be, thrive again. So now we prove it. And from the maritime arbitration sector, I think that I share the same views as Paul mentioned, that we are very unique, especially for those for those who doing business with China. And you will not find any other place, can place you in the better position to, attach the assets of the China interests in mainland. So not London, not Singapore, not anywhere else. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Hong Kong being the only common jurisdiction within the whole of China. That's irreplaceable. Thank you, Albert. Henrietta, your final takeaway?
Art and culture is very different from a lot of different industries. Artists and creators are the eyes and ears and the heart of the people of that country. And then a very prosperous art and cultural scene will eventually develop the country's civilization. So respecting the laws of the country and the basic foundation of every country is basic. But at the same time, it is very important to keep the freedom of expression. So as I mentioned in the speech, I think at the moment, the international community is waiting to learn and to understand and the more about the national security law and how they should abide by it. And then having that clarity would help the international art and cultural community to reinvest in Hong Kong and come back to really spend time with us.
Thank you, Henrietta. Paul?
Well, I think Hong Kong could be very proud of the development of the common law, the way in which we've contributed to the Commonwealth of common law. We're very persuasive in other countries in some of our cases. That is because we've got one of the best, if not the best, Court of Final Appeals in the world. There was this rumour, this fake news, that all the British judges were going to resign. But what has happened, of course, is that Supreme Court justices who sit on the British Supreme Court don't sit in Hong Kong. But we still have a lot of British judges actually sitting in the Court of Final Appeal, plus the former Chief Judge of Australia, Canada, etc., etc. I'll give you two examples from my two industries, one from construction. Hong Kong really cutting edge in setting the limitation period, the time within which a party can bring a claim or can start a claim in construction. That's the case of Bank of East Asia against Chinwe Marble. And the other one from arbitration is multi-tiered dispute clauses. Many of you in business will have these clauses that say if you want to go to a dispute, first you've got to negotiate in good faith, then you've got to go to the chairman of the company, then to mediation before you can arbitrate. Hong Kong law has clarified now that the arbitrators themselves can decide whether you've satisfied those stages. You don't have to go to court, so it saves you time and money in clarifying that. So we can be very proud, I think, of the development of law.
Thank you. Excellent, Paul. I mean, again, let me remind everyone that Article 84 of the Basic Law allows Hong Kong courts to keep referring to cases from other common law jurisdictions. That's constitutionally entrenched. And like Paul said, in fact, many of the Hong Kong cases are being cited, CFA cases, by other common law jurisdictions. That's something that we should be proud of. Thank you. And finally, Dixon?
Thank you. I think my fellow panelists have mentioned all the Hong Kong benefits and advantages across financial and non-financial aspects. What I would say is with the recent relaxation of the quarantine requirement to 0+3, and also the successful events like today's DOJ Legal Week, and also the investment summit that we have held last week, hosted by Hong Kong MA, Rugby 7, etc. So the key message to send to the world is Hong Kong is back to normal. And hopefully we will continue to have this momentum to pick up with rigorous other events and activities that we can continue to send the message, positive message to the world.
Thank you, Dixon. I think that concludes the discussion. To me, I think I learned a lot actually from my fellow panelists. And the most important takeaway, at least for is we talk about different rules, regulations that are really protecting Hong Kong. But ultimately, who is going to enforce these rules is our independent judiciary. So I think, like Chief Justice mentioned in the beginning, that Article 85 guarantees the judges in Hong Kong adjudicate cases free from interference. I think that's actually possibly the most important protection, safeguarding our rights and liberties. So on that note, I hope you enjoyed the session. I certainly did, especially the part about gin and tonic. Okay, on that note, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, our moderator and speakers. Please remain seated. Yes, as we would like to invite our moderator and also speakers to take a group photo, one more official photo, before maybe just seated will be perfect one. Yes. What a enjoyable and also thought-provoking section we had just now. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause to our moderator, Mr. Chan, our speakers, Mr. Wong, Mr. Starr, and Dr. Henrietta Chola. Thank you so much. Thank you. Please be seated off stage. Thank you. Dear distinguished speakers, guests, and also physically located here at our Hong Kong Convention and Exhibition Center, as well as our online participants, thank you so much for your support of the Congress, and the morning section ends here. Please be reminded to take all your personal belongings with you. We will now break for lunch. For speakers and moderators and also invited guests, marked with an orange dot on your name badge, please kindly proceed to the lunch venue at the Bohemia Room downstairs. Our crew members will also show you the way. Don't worry about it. And also for the Congress in the afternoon, we will resume at 2. Please be seated 5 minutes before our starting time, which is 1:55. For online participants, please kindly join us with the online link once again at 2 p.m. sharp. So ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the lunch and we will see you all at 1:55. Thank you.